Thanks for joining us this morning. Thank you for attending this session. The title of the session is Byte to Insight, Maximize Value from Your Logs with Amazon CloudWatch. My name is Andres Silva. I'm a Principal Specialist Solutions Architect focusing on observability. And Nikhil, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Nikhil Kapoor. I'm a Principal Product Manager with Amazon CloudWatch.
Excellent. So what would be good to start is if we give you an idea of what you can expect on this session. Nikhil, why don't you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So today our goal is to walk you through some of the new capabilities we have launched in CloudWatch, as well as some of the capabilities we've had for a while, but helping you understand how to best leverage them to, again, maximize value from these logs. And in that process, our goal is to give you some techniques, like tangible techniques that you can apply in your own workloads and services and applications to, maximize, again, value from your logs. You'll see this theme about value over and over in the session because we want to anchor that point. That's what we, at Product Manager CloudWatch, that's what we want to give our customers is how can you get better insights, most value from your logs.
Excellent. So I think the best way to start, if we're going to discuss that, is to level set on CloudWatch, what it is, and so that we can all understand where we're at and what we're going to discuss. You want to go ahead and give us an overview?
Yeah, so just before we go there, so this is, I walked through at a high level, so this is the agenda of the session. Obviously, you can see what we are looking at. And talking about CloudWatch, excuse me. So CloudWatch, Andres, do you know what CloudWatch is?
Well, I just think it's this thing that pushes metric from my EC2 instance, right? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, we hear that a lot. And if any of you caught Dr. Werner Vogel's keynote this morning, you heard about CloudWatch as well on how we scale and help customers. So just to give you an idea, CloudWatch is everything in this box that we are pointing at, a full stack observability solution at enormous scale, and completely AWS native. So you don't have to manage anything, you don't have to spin up anything, it's there for you in every region. And it goes from the foundations like logs, metrics, traces, all the way to digital user experience monitoring, APM, application signals that we launched this year. So it's the whole suite of solutions that combine to come together to make CloudWatch.
Yeah, and logs too, right?
Yes, logs too. Good call.
Exactly. Okay, cool. Yeah, so sometimes the perception is, like Nikhil said, just CloudWatch is what pushes my metrics. But let's talk a little bit about how CloudWatch has evolved. We got a nice diagram from the keynote this morning, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, Nikhil.
Yeah. And specifically, because our session is about logs, we will focus more on logs-related things. And you'll see it's not just logs, how things tie in together, but we'll talk more about how logs come into play. So with that in mind, Andres, so this is where, in 2014, is when CloudWatch Logs was first introduced. So it's been a while, and over the years, we have heard some of the things our customers have asked for. We've added a lot of capabilities. And these are just some of the things, the key milestones, if you will, that we had over the years. But it has evolved since then. And this is how it looks like today. Right? So if you notice, last 2-3 years, there's been a huge amount of changes and improvements to how customers can use logs and get value from logs within CloudWatch. And I just want to emphasize this point. The things in 2024 which are labeled as new, this is not everything that we did in 2024. This is just some of the things that I could fit in this slide. But everything new, labeled new, is everything that was released just in the last 3 weeks. That's not the full year. So a lot has changed. So I'm sure not everybody has had a chance to catch up on some of these new features yet, which is totally okay. We will cover some of these in this session today. Not every feature will be covered, but we will try to cover some of these features. And you also must have heard, hopefully some of you have heard about the new operational investigations that we launched with Amazon Q Developer. That's also powered by CloudWatch under the hood, and as us being the native observability platform for AWS.
Nice. So I think what we're going to do, Nikhil, is that we're going to try to cover some of these key features, like you said, but with a taste of maximizing value, right? There's a reason why we're wearing these T-shirts, right?
Yes. All right, no, good call. So rather than just talking about different features, what we thought we'd do instead is talk about how we approach, or we internally within Amazon, when we instrument our logs and use our logs, how we approach thinking about what's the right thing to log and how to use those logs appropriately. And with that in mind, the goal of our session would be, for us, would be to help you, one, understand how to think about, or how we think about maximizing value, and two, apply it in your own services. So what is value? So at the end of the day, what we're looking for, any telemetry data or any data in general, is some kind of insight. Does it answer a question that is important to me? And the converse of that is, how much does it cost for me to answer that question, right? So, and like, it's a simplified way of saying that's how we define value, that some answers are so valuable that costs are not the primary thing you think about, while others, where it's a table stake question you should always be able to answer, there we need to spend as little as we can, and hence maximize value. So with that in mind, let's first define what an insight is. I talked about insight, answering a question. That's what we all want to do in terms of getting answers to those questions. But what is an insight that we talk about? So here's a definition of, one of the definitions of an insight, and the capacity to gain an accurate and deep intuitive understanding of a person or a thing. Does that make sense to you, Andres?
Well, it definitely it took me a while to digest. But what does that have to do with maximizing value and observability?
Good call. So how do we apply it to logs? So when we were, Andres and I were thinking about the structure of the session and how to help convey how we think about logs in a hopefully way you can take away, was in this definition, if we break this down, the first part, getting intuitive understanding, is the fact that what are you trying to learn, right? There's something you are trying to get an understanding of. What are you trying to learn? The what. The other part of it, the key part of this definition, is the context in which you're trying to learn. You're trying to learn something about a person or a thing. In case of observability, you're trying to learn about an event that happened at a certain time, or something that happened with a component in your application. Something, so there's a context and the what. These are two high-level themes we thought made sense to break it down in.
So, can you dumb it down for me a little more?
I saw that coming. So how do we let's take a few questions that hopefully most of you see in your day-to-day that we try to answer through logs or telemetry data in general with observability, and see if we can fit that in this mold of the what and the context. So this is the first question, and these are, we try to make them specific questions which can be hopefully generalizable to you. So a common thing we look for in any type of logs, it's an application server or a web app, like, what's the rate of block transactions for app A, right? So in this case, what is the context app A? Like, whatever application you're trying to get in, and what are you trying to learn? The block transaction rate, right? So this is how the what and the context play in. Let's take a few more examples just to try to hopefully drive that point home. What are the top 10 customers whose transactions are taking longer than 100 milliseconds, right? So we're trying to understand, hey, who's getting impacted with this increase in latency? So in that case, the context in which you're trying to learn is latency greater than 100 milliseconds, and then what you're trying to learn is who are those 10 customers, top 10 customers impacted. So this is, taking it one step further, the two things, the what and the context. In this case, we knew both of them. We knew what we wanted to learn, and we knew the context it wanted to learn it. So we'll describe these kinds of questions in a known type of a way, right? These scenarios, you already know what you want to learn. You know the context in which you want to learn it ahead of time. So there's a different way we approach it in terms of what tools you use, how you use them, and how to apply it in our observability or log analytics experience. Let's take a converse example. Mm-hmm. So I don't know about others, but there's plenty of times in my developer days where I would get paged, or a support ticket would come in and say, hey, this customer is complaining something happened. And all I would have is a customer ID or a request ID or a session ID and some type of time frame in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. And I have no idea what to look for, right? Where do I start? So this is the scenario where all I know is the context, that it's this customer or this request ID. I have no idea what I'm going to learn when I look for this request ID. So the what is a bit of ambiguity, ambiguous here. Mm-hmm. Similarly, I made a change in this Lambda at this time, and something changed. Is something different? Is something break? I don't know if something broke or not, but I need to find out what it is. So again, I know the context that I made a recent change on this Lambda, but did something change? I don't know. So that's what I'm trying to find out. And one last, just to, again, make that it's not always the what that's missing. Sometimes it's the context that's missing. So, one of the developers in your team maybe didn't know about it, but they terminated an instance, and it impacted somebody else. And now in this case, what I know is a terminated instance event happened. I can go to my CloudTrail logs and figure out. But what I'm trying to find out is who did it and at what time did it. So the context of the person or the time is missing. What I know is I'm looking for that terminated instance call. So it can go both ways. And these types of questions, we call them known unknown. So you know part of the answer you're trying to get, you know either the what or the context, but the other part may be missing. Does that help, Andres?
Yeah, no, it's kind of coming together. Let's connect it to the maximize value now.
Okay, perfect.
Let's do that.
So now that we know like this, again, this may be other ways of breaking down, but we'll follow this organizational structure to hopefully convey how to think about the value part of it. Now, let's take known knowns and known unknowns. Why this breakdown was important? Because in case of known knowns, when you already know what you're going to look for, the block transaction in a 5-minute interval, no matter how awesome of a tool, how much money you spent, you're not going to learn anything more beyond what you already know. It's always going to give you the number of transactions ever blocked in that interval, right? So there's not much more insight you can get from that. So in this case, our goal should be, how can we make the cost as low as possible to get that insight, which in turn will maximize our value, lower the denominator, right? Conversely, in case of known unknown, because there is ambiguity, you may value getting an insight faster, better, more accurately, easily, over reducing costs, right? So sometimes that customer support ticket that I had to look for a session ID, if I can do it in 2 minutes with one query, I'll be more than willing to spend $10 extra on that, right? So that's the kind of the mental model on where we should look for reducing costs versus where we should looking for trying to maximize the insight value for us. All right.
Cool. I think I'm an expert now.
You're an expert? All right, so now let's see, how do you think known scenarios can be explained better?
Okay, let's talk about that then. Let's use some of the questions that you presented before that can be answered in the known scenario. So here's a couple of them. The top 10 customers with latency over 100 milliseconds and requests with action block. So typically when we are tackling these problems and we have logs, what is the inclination? What do we do immediately? It's to go write a query, right? Let's write a query, and let's put the results in a dashboard, and let's share it with everybody. But what ends up happening is that you run that query, and others run that query hundreds, if not thousands of times. Guess what happens when you're scanning data over and over and over? There's a better way of doing it, right? And it's not hard. You go to the next one. All right, the next one, yeah. Let's go to the first question. How do we tackle this? So you have, you're looking in the logs for actions equals block, right? And we want to know how many of those in 5-minute interval are happening for whatever period we're specifying, right? To address that, we can use metric filters. How many of you know what metric filters are? Show of hands. Very good. This is going to be awesome. You're going to love this, the ones if you don't know about it. So what metric filters does is that you have your log group, and you're receiving all that data there. You can define a filter that would capture a specific value in that log, and it will create a metric for it. So think about the problem that we're tackling. Action equals block. So I can create a filter that whenever that criteria is met, I can go put a data point and a metric value. And what that allows me to do is have a constant view in my environment of every time that's happening. It gives me flexibility too, because I can not only see it in 5-minute intervals, I have more flexibility of how I can manage that. And I'm not running a query that's counting a bunch of data, right? So that's what metric filters is. And pay attention to the light bulb and the dollar sign, right? We get a lot of insights, and this is a mechanism so that we don't have to spend too much on it to get the insights that we want. All right, so let's go to the other question, Nikhil. So what happens is that, did I get you excited about metric filter? Yeah, no, kind of. All right. Is there a more efficient way of doing it? Because what I just described, you have an existing log group, you have to go define the metric and define the filter and all that. Great. Is there a more efficient way of doing it? We should talk about embedded metric format, right? And let's go to the next slide, Nikhil, please. So what is embedded metric format? Well, it's taking the filter to the next level, because what it is basically a format that you can use to put the values in the log, and then CloudWatch would automatically create the metric for you. You don't have to define the filter. It is completely portable. Whatever AWS account, whatever region you go, your code is going to behave the same way, and it's going to produce the metrics that you want. You don't have to go configure filters on the log group or anything like that. So it is super powerful, and it's something that if you have control over the code, this is the optimal way to do it. Right, Nikhil?
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing to what Andres was saying. So if you think about this, as you are writing your applications or instrumenting your logs, telemetry in general in your code, you are doing that whole setup of where to create metric in the process. And at the same time, you're putting in additional information that may be valuable when you go to that next level analysis from that metric in the same log.
Yep.
So this is a log message,
Yep.
to be clear, which automatically extracts metrics for you as they're ingested, right? And across Amazon, when we instrument our applications, our services, this is like our first priority. We first look for, can we use EMF to solve this problem? This is how we instrument across AWS, our services.
Yep. It makes it much easier. All right, well, let's talk about the next question. Of known. Top 5 customers with latency over 100 milliseconds, right? So this is a different problem, slightly different, right? So what we can use in this case and what we should discuss is contributor insights. Now, how many of you are familiar with contributor insights? Show of hands. Contributor insights? Any fans out there? Cool. So what contributor insights allows you to do is you basically create a rule and you tell contributor insights what you're looking for. In this case, latency, and you want to reference the customer either by user or a customer ID or by account ID, whatever you like. And then this is going to automatically collect that information and give you the top end of that value, right? And this is super important to answer questions like the one we presented, right? Like who are my customers that are being impacted, maybe by high latency. So contributor insights is a great way of addressing that problem.
But Andres, this is super important. Like when I want to see which are the top customers that are impacted or top components that are driving the most CPU utilization or whatever it may be, can I get detection? Like, can I set up alarms on this?
Yeah, of course. You can set up alarms. That's the beauty of it. You can take advantage of all the other functionality that we provide within CloudWatch. You can add this to a dashboard. You can set up an alarm. So it allows you to leverage the insight. And you can see we have that light bulb there, right?
Yeah.
That's Nikhil there. Light bulb that's going to help you get valuable insights from the data. And we'll show you in a demo how all that looks and how you can leverage it. So all this, you can put it together in your dashboards so that you can visualize it. Again, you're not scanning a bunch of data, right? So this is the way to maximize value. You can create alarms of contributor insights. You can take advantage of all that. And that's how you maximize value. There's a QR code there that you can take a picture scan of a blog that shows you how you can implement this yourself. And you can go at your own pace. But we want to just whet your appetite so that you can understand how you maximize value by leveraging contributor insights.
So wait, Andres. So all these dashboards and metrics and alarms you created from logs, I didn't have to write a single query?
Nope, no queries. You just go and select the metric like any other metric, and add it. After you map it however you want, you can go and add it to the dashboard. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So
is there like this? I still have to create dashboards. Are there some things which I can just get those views out of the box?
Yeah, great you ask. We look like an infomercial, right? But anyway, happy to announce as a new feature that was recently released, Zero ETL with CloudWatch logs is integration between CloudWatch logs and OpenSearch Service Analytics. So like Nikhil mentioned, what it allows you to do is have a curated set of dashboards using the visualizations from OpenSearch. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to ETL the data or anything. You don't have to launch an OpenSearch cluster to do this. We take care of all that for you on the back end. And additionally, with this feature, we are providing two additional query languages that you can leverage. PPL, OpenSearch PPL, and SQL. I think a lot of customers are excited about that because it gives them more flexibility to take advantage of some of the analytics that these languages provide, and some of the flexibility also. So I have some more news, some good news, right? See, the thing is, I think Nikhil was wondering is, all that stuff that I was talking about is easy to do if your logs are in the right format, right? But what happens when your logs are not in the format so I can extract the fields and do all that? Happy to announce this new feature too, enhanced log analytics. So now there's a few things here. Now you can query across a larger set of log groups. It used to be 50 only. Guess how many there are now? You can search 10,000. Right? You can also use prefixes, or you can search across all your logs with this new feature. You can also create indexes, and Nikhil is going to talk more in depth about that later on. And a cool thing that I'm going to demo for you in a couple of minutes is transforming your logs so that they can be in the right format, and you can extract those insights that we were talking about, metric filter, and things like that. So we'll show you how that works, but basically it's transformation at ingestion that you can leverage to take advantage of all those other features. So here's a little bit more about how all this works. Transformation, you take your logs. You can, if it's JSON, you can add more data, and I'll show you how that works. We have pre-built, or we support JSON, Grok, and I'll show you a few others. There's a number of pre-built templates for transformation, WAF, VPC, Apache, Nginx. And we can do custom transformations using Grok, like you see there. Then, in addition to that, where you're transforming your log, extracting the data from maybe a CLF format or other formats, you can add context. Now you can add like the region if you want to be a key in the log, right? Or you can add the log group name, or you can add whatever information you want. You can actually, as you create the transformation via code or via infrastructure as code, you could parameterize and maybe put an environment or put a workload, whatever you want, you can inject as a transformation mechanism using transformers. And then analyze, which is by leveraging the discovered fields and field indexes, which we're going to cover a little bit more later. And then you can use that information for your dashboard, you can use it for alarming, and even for subscription filters. Did I miss anything?
No, that's great. So now,
Excellent.
Basically, everything you were talking about earlier, I had in my head, like, a lot of this metric and filter extraction, contributor insights, all the great stuff, relies on some information being in my logs in a way that's needed.
Exactly.
And in the past, the only way for me to do was update my agent or client side changes to change any logs. So now I can just do it all on the server side. I don't have to touch anything.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. That's what it is, right? So now you can take your logs in whatever format they are and make them usable to extract all these insights. But I think we should do demo. People like demos. Let's do demos.
Let's do that.
Thank you, sir. And we need to switch to demo here. This is the most difficult part of the whole presentation. All right. So the first thing I want to show you is a sample log, right? And I know where you're going to say, well, that's a nice looking log. It's all JSON, nicely formatted, right?
Oops.
Oh, sorry about that. How inconvenient. All right, there we go. We'll go back to my Firefox here. Thank you. So this is the way my sample JSON log looks. And this is all dummy information. This is not a real system or anything like that. But you can see that I have some interesting things like user, status. I have a bunch of metrics that I'm deriving from my code, and I just put it in the log because it's easier. I can do this, or I can do EMF, and I'll show you in a little bit how EMF works. Now, when we have that, right, You know, I usually get very good ideas when I see this, my notes. Anyway, when we have that data and we want to answer questions like, you know, what is the number of requests with action equals block, our initial tendency is to write a query like this, the one you see here. But we're not going to do that because we already explained to you that's not the most efficient ways for the known scenarios, right? Doesn't mean you're not going to query. You at some point going to have to query. It just depends how much you have of the context and what you're looking for. But what we can do is define a metric filter. And let me show you how that works real quick. So the way defining metric filters works is you go to the actual log group, and there's a tab for metric filters. And you can see that I have a couple of them here. I have like 3 of them. This one is the action block. This is a load time. And this is one where I'm pulling just a random metric, right? So when you click create, it basically takes you through this wizard. So the first thing you define is the filter pattern. So in this case, we have a nice JSON log, and we can go ahead and specify, well, what I'm looking for is for, you know, $.action equals block. That's the pattern. The nice thing is I can test this pattern. Like it'll load data from the actual log, and I can test it. I would have to look for the action because it's probably, this one doesn't have block. So if I test it now, it's not going to return anything. But I can edit this here and make it whatever I want to make sure that it works. Once I test my pattern and I'm satisfied with it, I can just go ahead and go to the next one, give it a name. For the filter, I give a name for the metric that I want, the value. So basically what I want is every time you find one of those to, you know, create a counter for it. I give it some dimensions. And then that's it. I have my filter, right? I'm going to show you this one because I have more data on this one. But basically, once I create my filter and I navigate through my metrics, I'll be able to see this dimension, or in the dimension namespace. And now I can see my metric mapped out, you know, and I'm not running a query. I'm not scanning data millions of times. I can take this, move it to a dashboard. I can create an alarm off of it. I have all that flexibility, and I'm maximizing value because I'm not unnecessarily running all these queries. Okay, the other thing we discussed was the top 10 customers with latency. So for that, I want to show you contributor insights real quick. To create a contributor's insight, let me just walk you through it real quick. It's pretty simple. Basically, what you have to specify is the rule. I'll show you the syntax because it's easier than going through the wizard. I'm looking at the load time, and I'm specifying the key as the client IP in this case. It would make more sense to have like a customer ID or something like that in this case, or a username or something like that. But once you create it, it'll start collecting the data. And as you can see here, I already have my map of my top 10 contributors. And like we discussed before, I can add this to a metric, to a dashboard, and I can quickly see critical data, critical insights about the data that's in my logs that can help me make operational decisions, business decisions. So that's a little bit of contributor insights. Now I want to show you a little bit of how EMF works. So what I have here is a Lambda function. It's written in Python, and it's pretty straightforward. It couldn't be more simple. So essentially what I'm doing here is defining in the format that is specified for embedded metric format a metric. I'm specifying all the details, the namespace, and all that. And then this is the key line here that I love. I'm just printing it out to stand that out. And it's going to go into the log. And CloudWatch does the rest. It'll grab it. It'll create a metric for me. And it'll be done. I think I can show you here in metrics real quick one of those that I created. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a new namespace. In this case, I call it demo EMF. And there's my metric. This one specifically, I did it against the CloudTrail log. And the CloudTrail log, what I said was, no, I'm on the wrong thing. This is not the right one.
Why don't we show the new features?
No, hold on. Let me just go to the right one. You mean the, hold on one second. Yeah, custom lambda metrics, my apologies. I was on the wrong one. There we go. So this is the EMF data that I'm pushing in that lambda function. All right, cool. So the next thing I wanted to show you real quick is log transformation, right?
There you go.
Log transformation. So in very similar way, what happens is you go into the log group. In the transform tab, you're going to create a new transformer. And this transformer that I'm using here is going to be using Grok, which is a very common parser utility. And it's very simple to do. We're going to use Grok. We're going to give it the input, which is message, which is what's coming on the log entry. And in this case, we're using Grok's standard transformer for Apache logs. And Grok has already taken care of building all the different parsing rules that are needed to extract the data. So I can add, on top of that, other parsers or processors. In this case, what I'm doing is a copy value. So I'm doing transformation on the first one, and now I'm doing enrichment. Because what I'm doing is adding the region to a field called region, so that I can include that in my log also. So I will go ahead and here, so that I can make sure that it's working properly, load a sample of the log. So that basically pulls a sample of the log from the log group. And then I test my transformer. And you can see it's working because this is how that log looks, which is CLF format, standard format. But this is what it looks like now after being transformed. We have a nice JSON log with all the fields defined, everything organized. And towards the bottom here, you can see my new enrichment field called region, right? So that's how that works. Once you save it, it'll start transforming all that data, and you can leverage to use all the other features that we have discussed. All right. And then the last thing I want to show you is all the new functionality with log insights. So specifically with SQL, what I have here is a couple of queries that I built for CloudTrail data. And the nice thing about, and here it is, the nice thing about SQL, number one, a lot of our customers, a lot of people are familiar with SQL. It's very easy to use, but also have a lot of powerful functions that you can leverage. In this case, this query that I'm going to run, what it does is it shows me the top APIs that are being called in the CloudTrail log. There you go. So they start running there. It'll take a few seconds. But essentially, this will show me, like, this is the top API. The last time I run it, it was X-ray because it was doing sampling on this account. And it will give me, like, all of them. The key here is that I'm leveraging all these functionality. There we go. X-ray is still there, right? And again, I can visualize this data. I can add it to a dashboard. I can do a lot of those things. And then to finalize, I'll show you how nice the OpenSearch dashboards look. Once you go here, you can create a dashboard. You just specify which one of the logs that are supported. We support CloudTrail, WAF, and VPC flow logs. So in this case, I have a CloudTrail one, and it's a very nice pre-made dashboard that will show me key information about my CloudTrail logs, like event count. I have here events over time and things like that. This is super powerful to detect what's going on in my environment right now. If I'm troubleshooting an issue or an operational issue, I can come in here quickly and see if something changed, if something has been affecting my environment. I have some selectors here that I can use. But the key here is that all these features should help you, again, maximize value instead of just going and running more and more queries. All right, cool. That's it.
Awesome. Wait, are you saying this dashboard was just there? Did you not have to set this up?
No, it was just there.
Oh, wow.
You just create it, and it comes pre-built. You don't have to specify any of that. This is a multi-account trail, and I have all my account IDs, as you can see here. I can dive deep into the data.
Perfect.
And
That's awesome.
yeah, very easy. So,
Well, thank you.
all right, let's move on.
All right. So that was some of the known criteria we had talked about earlier, and what different features you can use to maximize value for known knowns. Now let's talk about the other one, the known unknowns. Mm-hmm. Now, just to quick recap what we talked about, how we think about this two framework, right? So in case of known unknown, our priority is slightly different. Is how can we get better insights, and cost becomes a secondary criteria. So these were the questions we had posed, or two of the questions we had posed. We said, I made a change here. Is there something new? And the other one was that needle in the haystack scenario. What happened to this request ID? So we'll walk you through both of these questions and how we can solve them in a meaningful way. But before we do that, in the known unknown case, I think there is value in just emphasizing some of the housekeeping you can do ahead of time that'll make all of these scenarios work just better. So for example, if we can organize our logs with the right log group naming convention and structure, it'll simplify when you are searching for things. Similarly, when you're organizing or instrumenting your logs, try to have a consistent, meaningful convention when possible. And if you can't, that's where what Andreas showed with the log transformation, it can help. Yep. And there are several other things you can do. Is if it's a structured log format, it allows you to do a lot more. Whether it's JSON or key value, key equals value, structure a service log format, but have some structure in your logs. All right, so housekeeping aside, now go back to our question at hand. So we started with, I made a change. Is there something new in the log? So we have two tools within CloudWatch that help you answer that question depending on what you're trying to do. So if I'm in my Lambda, like Andreas was, I made a change, and I want to see exactly what's happening as I made the change. I don't want to go anywhere else or go back and forth. So we have Livetail, and this is how Livetail looks like. So Livetail was announced last year, but this year we added a streaming CLI support. So you don't even, if you're not in the console, wherever you are, you can just live stream Livetail straight to where you are. We also added it natively in the Lambda console, because Lambda use case was so popular as customers are making changes. They want to know what's going on in your logs. So in the Lambda console, as you're making changes, you'll see a Livetail option right there. The second thing you can do, and this was a scenario of real time as you're making changes, but what if Andreas made this change and something is going weird and I don't know what's going on. So I say, Andreas, when did you make that change? And Andreas says, an hour ago or whatever. So I go to this, I want to now figure out what's happening. I could run a bunch of different queries, try to figure out what's different, or I simply go to my logs insights and say, show me the logs before and 1 hour before the change happened and what now, and just show me what's different in those logs. I don't have to give any input on what fields or what to look for. I'm just doing a simple compare. And behind the scenes, if you see this screenshot below, it's clearly telling me this pattern is new. Or this pattern, it'll show you what pattern went away. It was there earlier. So it's helping me hone in on where I should spend my time rather than manually sifting through those logs. And so it's doing that all by, it's an aid to get to the answer faster. So the better insight, faster insight as we're getting to, that's what we mean by that. What's patterns, by the way? So compare uses patterns under the scenes. So what we do is, as the logs are coming in, as we are querying the logs, we try to take away all the dynamic variables in your logs and destructure the logs to say, this is effectively what the structure of logs looks like. So when you have tens of thousands of logs you're trying to analyze, instead of looking through 10,000 logs, you can look at 10 patterns and say, hey, this debug or info is likely not material. But this exception or error is maybe where I want to start. Right? So that's again, helping you anchor on that insight faster. Let's take it one step further. So here, this pattern, compare, all of that was, I had to go in and run the query and see what happened. So there was a manual action involved. What if we could do it even faster, to give you that answer even quicker? So all of this pattern compared together becomes anomaly detection. So when you apply it for certain critical application logs, you can just turn on anomaly detection on that log group or set of log groups, and it'll automatically monitor, hey, these were the patterns we were seeing earlier, and over time they're changing. And when something changes materially, it'll give you the anomaly, what it believes to be the severity of the anomaly, and explain what changed in this pattern, whether the percentage of logs with this pattern went up or down, or we hadn't seen this pattern. Right? So I'll try to give you, again, a navigation route to where you should start looking. All right, so that was question one. Let's go to the next question. Mm-hmm. And this is my favorite question, by the way, because I've had nightmares about this. So what is a request? What happened to this request ID? So there are, again, as I talked about, there are two big problems with this. One, I have no idea what I'm looking for, other than the fact that I need to find this request ID. The second problem, which when you have in CloudWatch, when you have cross-account especially, tens of thousands of log groups you could have, right? So you have a couple of dozen accounts with 100 log groups. Where do you even start? Well, this is where the queries are super powerful with the enhanced log group selection that Andreas mentioned. Now you can select up to 10,000 log groups. But second, now the problem comes into, like, I'm going to end up scanning a lot of data. What if there was a way for me to streamline that and not scan as much data, get faster query results? So here we are introducing the enhanced log analytics that we talked about. So the challenges I talked about, I want to search all my logs because I don't want to think about which log group, which account, all of that. But I also want faster results. I want to search all, but I want faster results, kind of going against one another. And finally, when you open this up, when I start searching all my logs all the time, I'm going to end up with scenarios where I'll scan a whole bunch of data that, A, costs money, 2, slows down queries, and I didn't want that. Is there a way I can limit that? So when we approached this problem and we were building this feature, we realized we can't solve only one at a time. We can't just give you all log groups and then we know it'll hurt when you don't have any way to limit it or control it. What happens? Similarly, if we give you ways to limit it, but you can't search in the context in which your log queries happen, whether it's which account I want to search or what kind of log groups I want to search at, it's not meaningful. So the solution to that, what we came up with was the enhanced log group selection, which allows you to select up to 10,000 log groups at the same time, not by individual 10 log groups, because that would be untenable, but by log group name prefix. Or if your accounts only have a few hundred log groups or less than 10,000 log groups, you can just search all. But now, how do we make them faster? So we introduce field indexes. What field indexes allow you to do is these common attributes like request ID, which is why my favorite is, I can say I always keep track of these request IDs because whenever I need to search them, I don't want to think where they are. You can now with field indexes, you can define up to 20 fields per log group or at an account level if you wish, and they'll be indexed for you automatically as the logs are ingested, and they'll remain indexed for 30 days since the log was ingested. All right, the final problem of this. All of this is great. But what if there was one log group or one time frame which I didn't index that request ID on, but I still do all log groups? Am I not going to run into this problem of that one bad log group caused me to have a much slower query at a much higher cost?
Because it doesn't expedite the search on the ones.
Yeah, the one which is not indexed, it won't know. Okay. So, which is why we introduced a new query command, filter index, which helps you do that. So if you know, hey, I want to search all my logs, but only where it's indexed, so you don't have inadvertent large scans, instead of using filter for request ID, you just use filter index, and it limits the scan to index data only. So we'll show you in a quick demo how this works, but the key thing I wanted to mention was, like, all of these together was to solve that needle in the haystack problem where you clearly don't have a good starting point because the problem posed doesn't give you that context, right? So the end of it all, our goal was to make those questions or answers to those questions simpler, faster, and more cost-effective. And all of these things I mentioned are available at no additional cost for your standard log groups.
I think that deserves a clap, right?
Thank you. So no additional cost in the standard log group ingestion costs. They're already included. Light bulb, $1. So better insights and saving costs at the same time. This is the double whammy. All right, perfect.
Awesome.
So let's do a quick demo.
Sounds great.
All right, so this is a setup of my demo. I tried to mimic with the setup like that scenario where I was talking about. We have multiple microservices. It's a grocery delivery app. I called it Green Grocer. I have a checkout service and other order service and a payment service. So don't worry about the specifics of the service. The idea I wanted to hone in at, this is like what we really have in our applications. We have a bunch of different services, often spread across multiple accounts, and you don't know where to start when you're looking for the needle in the haystack. So in my setup, I have them across 3 different accounts. I have one which is catering to the direct delivery, which on my own website, the groceries that I purchase. Another account, I have a reseller, which I use for all the reseller orders. And I'm monitoring in a central account for my entire app. All right. Let's switch to the demo. Okay, so before we get into the queries, I want to emphasize again one more time the point that you always want to start with some navigation route. So even though I can query all of this, I still have a dashboard, top-level dashboard for my service, which gives me business insights. And by the way, I used everything just Andrea said. None of this is queries. This is metric filters, contributor insights, all of that. And the idea is when I need to start troubleshooting something, I have a starting point on, hey, the average revenue and all of that, business metrics, but I also have errors. So if you see here, I can see, the errors for my reseller payment failed are higher than others. So maybe I want to start with that. That gives me a starting point if I'm troubleshooting a problem. So if I go to a query, I ran this query before we started to give you an idea of what my logs look like. So this is just a simple log, JSON log I'm publishing for each of my services. It's giving me some bare minimum information on what kind of user it is, who's the user, what was the error, or what was the event that happened. And I'm going to use all of this information throughout these queries. So I wanted to just anchor everybody on what the log looks like. So I have some key attributes here. Okay. So now we get to the fun part. So this is the CloudWatch console. And we should have said we have a whole bunch of things on the left, a whole bunch of them new. Not everything we could cover today. So hopefully when you go back, you can look at all the new stuff that's in CloudWatch. But now in my query, I want to search for that payment fail. What was happening? Why were those errors high? Now, I could do that a little bit cumbersome log. I'm lazy. I could select all these log groups today. I can say greengrocer, whatever. I can select 20-some log groups manually. But I'm lazy. So I'm just going to say, go by greengrocer. Because
You're not lazy. You're smart, man.
So I'm just going to enter this prefix. It's going to automatically find all the log groups, the 14 log groups in this case, that it's applicable at. And then I can specifically select the reseller account. If you recall, I said reseller is in my demo 3 account. So I can narrow the scope even when I'm doing this bulk log group type selection. I'm going to go ahead and run this query. I'm going to actually run it for, let's run it for 12 hours. I don't know how long it'll take.
Isn't that going to take long? We don't have that much time, man.
It could. Oh, wait, it finished already. So
that's great.
What happened here was, I want to call out 2 things specifically in this query. So one, I'm getting all the results that I wanted. I can see what the error count happened and whatnot. It scanned a reasonable amount of data. It finished in 2.5 seconds. So it scanned 4 megabytes, but it skipped 700 megabytes because I was using filter index, right? So what filter index did in this case is it said only search index data set. So A, it ruled out all the ambiguity. But 2, because event was indexed, we were able to further narrow down that we don't care about all the event types. What we care about is the where payment failed, which are less rare or rarer in my logs, hence less logs get scanned. So that's one. Now, what if I want to see, is this trend consistent across both direct to reseller, or is it specific to reseller? So I'll just quickly switch to all accounts. I'm just going to go ahead and all the accounts at the same time. I'll go ahead and run the same query. It'll scan a little bit more, and it'll give me the same result. So I actually see that when I search the other account, the payment gateway timeout count is much higher for now than it was previously. So I'm learning something new. All right, let's take it one step up. I'm even more lazy. And I got that request ID that we've been talking about this whole time, right? So in my case, that request ID corresponds to session ID, because that's how I'm tracking all my transactions. And all I have is this information. There was a session ID that happened at some point, somewhere in that a customer is escalating to my CEO about, and he wants to know what happened. So I don't know exactly what time frame. Let's say I search for 5 days. Maybe it happened in the last 5 days. And again, I don't know where it happened. So I'm going to just select all log groups. Right? So if I do filter, so here's the trick. If I do filter here without filter index and run this query, it will take longer, and especially because I'm running 5 days. But once this finishes, you'll notice the log groups that it ends up querying will be different. So this is I want to show the delta between filter versus filter index. So it's still running, it's taking its time, it's scanning a whole bunch of data. But all I did here was all log groups. In all my accounts, I only have a few hundred log groups, so it's still well below 10,000. But if you had a lot more, you would need another mechanism. So in this case, it scans 66 log groups, right? And you can see what log groups it scanned and whatnot. It took I would say it was okay, 31 seconds, but I think we can do better. So it still was pretty efficient. It skipped 14 gigabytes of data. But now I'm going to simply change to filter index. Everything else staying the same in the query, the time frame, the scope, everything staying the same. Keep an eye on this 66 log group count. I'm going to go ahead and run this query. And now this case, it finished in 4 seconds compared to 30 seconds. Still the same result. I'm still getting the same session ID. It only scanned 12 log groups. So the thing I was trying to highlight with this comparison is even with indexes within queries, depending on what you're trying to do, there are tools available, whether when to use filter, when to use filter index, that make it even better. And knowing this will hopefully help you get faster insights while minimizing the cost across your entire landscape.
Yeah,
and
that's something good to call out, because when you're using the indexes and you optimize them, you're not scanning as much data. So you're going to have those situations where you're going to have to do a query, but you want to do it in a way that maximizes value. That's awesome.
Exactly. So that was field indexes. Now with that, let's recap for our audience here some of the things we just touched upon.
Yes, let's do that. All right, so what did we learn on the show, right? Well, one of the things hopefully you'll take with you is that you have to be very deliberate on why you're logging. You're just not dumping data there. You want to be smart about it. And the second bullet point is this: that sometimes the best multi-tool is less optimal than a simple chisel. So you have to use the right tool for what you're trying to do.
Wait, Andres, are you trying to say something about queries?
Yes. Okay. How many times have I said it, right? So don't try to overdo it, right? Optimize. And we talked a lot about metric filters, EMF. Try to look for ways to optimize how you're using logs by leveraging those tools and contributor insights. And instead of asking, and this is funny because we always hear this question, how do I reduce cost, right? That's not the right question. And hopefully you learned that today here. The right question is, how do I maximize value, right? How do I tackle this problem in a way where I'm getting the most insights, for the optimal amount of money, of cost. We discussed the known unknown, metric filters, embedded metric format, and contributor insights are going to be great tools for you to precisely do that. We did a little math on one of the dashboards that I created for the demo, and it's the difference between spending $500 a month in one dashboard, or one widget in one dashboard that you query every 5 minutes, as opposed to $2.30, which is the cost of the dashboard and the cost of the metric for an entire month. So probably in the audience, there's people that do better math than me, but that's a big difference, right? And when you're talking at scale, it makes a huge difference. Log transformations can help you get to that state where you can leverage these tools. And of course, Log Insights is always your time machine. You're going to have to use Log Insights. Do it in a smart way and very carefully, right? So you want to wrap up the known unknown, Nikhil?
Yeah, no, this is great. So so I want to, like, the point about queries, like, it's not, we all love queries. I love queries. But the point is, we sometimes overdo them because we may be used to it. But all the other tools we just talked about, metric filter, contributor insight, EMF, these came about from how at Amazon, when we realized there's a better way to do it.
Yep.
EMF, metric filters, they all came about because our own internal service teams realized, hey, we don't want to be running queries again. And we want to share these with you, so hopefully you can apply it in your workloads. So using the right tool for the job is super important. Now, going to known unknown. So when we do run queries, and we learn a lot of them, run a lot of queries ourselves, we want to make them easier to use, faster to use, and more cost-effective and possible. And finally, when we can, help you navigate to that problem area faster. So which is where patterns, compare, anomaly detection all come into play. They were all built for the same reason. On the pattern thing, I'll leave you with one quick anecdote from our own. When we built this last year, and everything we build, usually we test it on our own, we dog food our own stuff, right? So we tested on our own logs within CloudWatch itself. And when we ran the pattern, our engineers found there was one pattern which was basically empty blank lines that somebody put in, and it was supposed to be taken out, it wasn't there. That was 99% of the logs for that log set.
Wow.
Just by running the pattern command, we uncovered that, and now since that learning, we have an ongoing, what we consider like a health check that happens on every log, every few days across AWS, where we look for these things where either something is not right or something that should be there is missing. This pattern is being used across AWS in that way. So hopefully you can leverage it to improve your logging as well.
Excellent. Awesome. So here are some resources you can use to learn more about everything we've discussed here today. There's a lot of good stuff in these QR codes. It sounds like this is the time where we say, because this has sounded so much like an infomercial, call now, right? No, but we're not going to do that. But we want you to hopefully understand better how some of these features work, how you can leverage them in your environments to maximize value. And that's it. Anything that you want to add?
No, we'll be here for any questions you have for the next 5-10 minutes. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. And don't forget to fill out the survey, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.